Resident Evil 7 was a really exciting time. It had been years since we had gotten a mainline entry, and after Resident Evil 6, there was just a lot riding on it. There was a lot of hype, but there was also a lot of questions. Because from the very beginning, it was obvious this wasn't going to look like a Resident Evil that we were used to. First person, one house, no city or global outbreak, just this family. And for me, this game was special. It was actually one of the first gifts my now wife ever got me, not long after we started dating, so I have that memory tied to it. But when I finally played it, it was dark and gross. It made you feel uncomfortable. It was pretty dang scary. But stepping back from that hype, what it meant to me personally, and from how different it felt at the time. What was Resident Evil 7?
Welcome to the family, son.
By the time RE7 started development, the series had a lot of momentum. It just didn't really have clarity. Resident Evil 6 came out in 2012, and it was big. It had multiple campaigns, characters that we knew and loved, global stakes, a lot happening all at once. And it sold millions. From a business standpoint, it checked all the boxes. But the conversation around it felt different. People weren't really talking about fear anymore. They were talking about spectacle, about how much was going on and how loud everything felt. The series had spent years expanding outward, a bigger scope, more characters, larger outbreaks, a lot more moving parts. And somewhere in all that expansion, the identity just kinda blurred.
Joey! Get your ass back to the house! I will deal with you later!
Capcom was aware of that. In interviews after RE6, producers acknowledged that the franchise had drifted. The survival horror foundation was still attached to the name, but it didn't feel centered anymore. It didn't feel like the spine of the experience. So around early 2014, work began on the next mainline entry, and internally, the tone of the conversation shifted. The question wasn't about scale this time, it became about feeling. What is Resident Evil supposed to feel like? What is the core of it? Producer Kawada talked openly about fear being the foundation. Fear you experience directly, the kind you sit inside, manage moment to moment. That was the starting point.
Oh, God. I guess this is it.
At the same time all this was happening, Capcom was building something new behind the scenes. RE7 ended up being one of the first major projects built on the RE engine. This was their new internal engine, something they developed to modernize everything. Lighting systems, performance stability, asset workflow, all of it. It was about building a foundation they could rely on long term, not just about visuals looking better. And RE7 was the game that had to carry that. It had to show that the engine worked, that it could handle a full mainline release, and that this new technical direction was solid. There was also a big VR push around this time. Sony had PSVR coming, and Capcom committed early to full virtual reality support. That wasn't some late addition, that was baked into development. Performance targets had to stay consistent, environments had to hold up under close inspection, everything had to function inside that hardware constraint. So now you've got this game carrying creative weight and technical weight at the same time. And then you zoom out even further. The industry around that time was experimenting with different revenue models, live service structures, microtransactions, these ongoing engagement loops. Publishers everywhere were looking at long-term monetization strategies. Those conversations were happening inside Capcom too. That was part of the larger business environment. But the team working on Resident Evil 7 kept the scope contained. Single player, complete experience, clear beginning and end, focused. That decision shaped the entire project. And that's really important. By the time development was really moving, RE7 was carrying a lot. It had to reestablish what the series was supposed to feel like, rebuild trust with people who felt unsure after the last entry, successfully launch a brand new engine, support VR in a real way, and it had to steady the direction of the franchise going forward. That's a lot. This was the next numbered Resident Evil. That name carries weight on its own. Expectations come with that. The entire industry was watching. Fans, Capcom. There was no hiding behind it. Resident Evil 7 exists because the franchise needed grounding. It needed definition again, a clearer sense of what the core experience was supposed to be. At the same time, it had to show that Capcom could move forward technically. New engine, new hardware support, a stronger production pipeline, all of that had to work together under one release. When it launched in 2017, you could feel the direction shift. It came through the design itself, the way the game was structured, and the way it presented itself. The conversation around Resident Evil changed after that. And everything that followed, the remakes, Village, the continued use of the RE engine, all of it branches from this moment.
Get away!
When the game was first shown to be in first person, that's the moment everything kinda changed. Up until then, aside from a couple of the side games, Resident Evil had always had some kind of visible framing. Fixed camera angles over the shoulder. You could see the character moving through the world. There was always a layer between you and what was happening. Capcom changed that on purpose. During development, Masachika Kawada talked about immersion a lot. The idea was to make you feel present in a very physical way. Like you're actually standing there when you see something move down the hallway or get a knife shoved in your face. And that changes everything.
You're a son of a bitch! Oh, I can't believe it, you son of a bitch! He's not eating!
This was supposed to be a very special feast. My boy.
When you're in first person, you can't see a character react to something. You react to it. It's not like watching horror play out in front of you, it surrounds you. If something comes around a corner, it's in your face. If you push a door open, it feels like your hand pushing it. There's no third-person silhouette, or posture to read, or body language telling you how confident your character is. It's just your viewpoint. Capcom believed that at that moment in gaming, first person was the strongest way to deliver horror. It pulls everything closer, enemies feel closer, rooms feel tighter and more claustrophobic. You don't have that sense of watching danger approach from a safe angle. And that ties directly into Ethan. Ethan is just some guy looking for his wife. He's not a hero. He's not even as confident as a rookie cop on their first day on the job. You don't really ever see him. His face is never fully shown during the game. Even in cutscenes playing as someone else, you never get a good look at his face. This is very different from how we look at Leon or Chris. There's no introduction shot for Ethan. No pose that says, yeah, this is your hero. He's there mostly through what you hear, his breathing, his voice, and the way he reacts. And the way he reacts is super important here. Because Ethan doesn't carry himself like someone trained or with confidence in a situation like this. He sounds lost and terrified. When something goes wrong, you hear it in his voice, and even in the way he breathes. There's panic, confusion, and pain. And he gets hurt in ways that really feel personal. He loses a hand to a chainsaw, gets limbs severed and reattached. Stabbed, dragged around. His body isn't treated like something invincible. It feels fragile and breakable. And sure, we learn more about this in the next game, but still, the guy gets mutilated and he feels it. Chris can take a hard hit and keep moving. Leon carries a ton of confidence. Even when he was a rookie cop, and Jill always handles herself like someone who understands the situation and knows she's going to make it through. Ethan feels like a normal guy who showed up looking for his wife and ended up somewhere he never expected or deserved to be. That normalcy makes him relatable. You're stepping into the shoes of someone who's scared and just trying to survive the next 5 minutes, not someone trained for survival or combat. And because the camera's in first person, you're not watching him struggle. You're inside it, you're struggling. When he gets a screwdriver rammed through his palm, it's easier to put yourself in that situation. That combination is the real shift. The perspective removes distance, and the character removes hero framing. You're left with presence and immediacy. The through line from Capcom was consistent. They wanted players anchored in the world, present in that space, and feeling what was happening at eye level. That's why the camera matters so much here. It's more than just a different angle. It changes who you are in the story. Instead of watching a hero fight through a nightmare, you, the player, are standing in it.
Inside jaw must contain outbreak.
The Baker estate is one of the smartest decisions in the whole game, because it's more than just a backdrop or a set piece. When you first walk up to it, it just looks like a rundown property out in the Louisiana swamps. A big quiet house with an overgrown yard. But once you're actually inside it, you start to see how big the place really is. There's the main house, the old house out back, a greenhouse, a barn that turns into a testing area, the guest house, and the boathouse. All of it sitting on this patch of land surrounded by swamp and fences like it's been cut off from the world. It's a full estate. And what makes it interesting to me is how connected it all feels. You're never just moving forward, you're circling, looping back through rooms you've already been in, unlocking doors you walked by hours ago, then seeing a hallway connecting to something you didn't even expect. It starts to feel bigger the more you learn it. And that is very old school Resident Evil. The layout unfolds slowly. At first it feels simple, but then you find a hidden passage or realize a locked door loops around to an area you've already been. Then you're back in a room that felt safe earlier, but it doesn't feel so safe now. You end up building a mental map without even thinking about it. You remember where the safe rooms are, which hallway leads back to the locked door you couldn't open 2 hours ago. That memory becomes part of how you survive this place.
We always. As you Instead a word means.
It's the same philosophy the original mansion had in RE1. That place worked because it was its own world, its own enemy. The rooms overlapped, paths doubled back. You were learning the building, not just progressing through it. The Baker estate does that same thing, just filtered through a different setting. And that setting is very important here. This isn't a Gothic European mansion. It's a southern property that feels like people live in it. The main house still looks like a family home underneath everything that's happened to it. There are photos on the walls, trophies, bedrooms, toys. Then you step into the old house and it feels heavier, closer to the swamp, walls that look like they've been absorbing moisture for years. Floors look like you could fall through at any moment. Then you move into the barn and testing area and it shifts again. The area feels like it was built for something, mechanical and intentional. And because all of this sits on the same property, it never feels like the levels actually change. It feels like you're peeling back layers of one broken place. Then there's the fact that all of this is surrounded by a swamp. The swamp does a lot for the setting without really being too loud about it. You're surrounded by water, mud, trees, and fencing. There's no traffic in the distance or city skyline. No sense that the world is right outside the gate. It feels completely sealed off from the world. You're in this pocket of land and everything that matters is inside it. The feeling of containment does a lot here. The horror in this feels local, personal. You're trapped inside someone's home. It never feels global. You're thinking about how to get from the laundry room back to the save room without running into Jack. You never think about what's happening outside of this one place. That focus shrinks the world down to the size of the estate. The house here is never set up just to be a backdrop. It's the system. It controls your movement, dictates your routes, holds your progress, and shapes your anxiety because you know the place well enough now to understand when something is wrong or feels off. The original Resident Evil mansion built tension through layout and memory. The Baker estate does the same thing, but in its own way. You learn it, you live in it, and get comfortable enough to move through it quickly. Then something interrupts that comfort. That's where the fear really lives, and something you've become familiar with becoming unstable. The Baker estate really earns its place in the series because it functions as a contained world. You could almost lift the property out of the game and study it on its own. It's cohesive, it makes sense geographically, and it feels like somewhere that existed before you walked into it. And once you're in it, everything revolves around understanding it. Hey, just real quick, if you made it this far into the video, thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. If you're enjoying it, consider subbing if you haven't already. There's a lot of content already on the channel and there's always more coming. And I also want to give a quick shout out to all the members of the channel and everyone that supported the Resident Evil 7 stream with super chats. I really appreciate that you all want to support the channel in that way. I do stream on Wednesday and Friday evenings, so be on the lookout if you want to swing by one day. But again, I appreciate you all. Let's get back into RE7 and look at its actual systems and how it feels to play.
And these guys are here to clean up the mess.
When you actually start playing the game and seeing the systems is when you realize how much they've tightened everything. The first few hours especially, you just feel small. You never feel prepared. You just walk in wondering what's going to be behind the next corner. Ammo is limited from the start, and picking up a gun doesn't suddenly make you feel safe. Every bullet matters, and you really feel it when you shoot because you usually aren't swimming in supplies. Enemies don't drop anything. There isn't this steady stream of resources after every fight. You have to search for what you need. You find things in drawers, cabinets, and corners you almost missed. And the molded are built in a way that makes you respect them. Overall, they're slow when it comes to combat, but they can close distance really quick. You'll see one at the end of a hall, run away to gain some distance, and when you turn to aim, it's right in your face. They also take a lot of hits. In most cases, unless you're landing headshots with a shotgun, they don't crumble the second you shoot them. You have to think about spacing, watch their movement, decide if it's even worth the supplies to engage with them. Ethan can also block, which is interesting, but it doesn't turn him into some tank or powerhouse. It just gives you a split second of survival. You raise your arms and brace for impact. The way he does it really feels kinda desperate, like you're just trying to absorb the damage instead of overpowering anything. And that really fits him. We've already talked about how he's just some guy, and you can really feel that in the combat also. He's not fluid or quick in this slick, confident way. When you turn or move, it feels heavy. When you swing or shoot, it feels like there's this hesitation behind it. He fights like someone who is just desperately trying to survive. The game really slows you down. You have to listen before you move. You peek into rooms instead of kicking the doors down. You might stand in a doorway longer than you normally would in other games, scanning the area before fully walking in. That hesitation there becomes part of how you survive.
I will find him, and I will make him suffer. And you, my friend, will help me.
Then there's the crafting. Chem fluid becomes this really important thing early on. You pick it up and you have to decide what it's going to become. A first aid med, handgun ammo, burner fuel, psychostimulants. Later you find stronger versions of it, and that opens up stronger options. But the decision never stops being meaningful. You don't just craft things as soon as you find the needed items either. You think about what you might need in the next stretch. You weigh it. If you turn that into healing, you might not have ammo. If you make ammo, you might be walking around hurt. Psychostimulants are one of the most interesting parts of this system. Items in this game are hidden extremely well. They're tucked into shelves behind boxes, sitting in shadows that don't scream, "Pick me up." You can clear a room 3 times and still miss something important if you're not paying attention. When you use psychostimulants, suddenly items light up in your field of view. You start spinning slowly, scanning every inch of the area. It changes how you explore. You start studying the rooms because you really need to make some ammo. And that tells you something about the design. They expect you to check every corner, to crouch and look under tables, to re-enter rooms you think you cleared just in case you overlooked something. Inventory management feeds right into that. You get a handful of slots at the start, and you can expand it by finding backpacks, but it's still limited. Every item you pick up has weight to it because it takes up 1 square. Most of the weapons take up 2 squares. You find yourself standing in front of the item box thinking about what to carry. Do you bring the shotgun? Do you stash it and carry more healing? Do you leave that extra gunpowder for later? Sometimes you loop back to a box just to reorganize before pushing forward. That loop, moving between the estate and the item box, feels very intentional. You carve routes through the house based on what you're carrying. And then Jack enters the picture. Jack doesn't behave like a one-and-done enemy. He's a stalker enemy. He shows up when you're trying to solve something or trying to get to the other end of a hallway. He forces you to move. Sometimes you fight him, other times you just run. He keeps the house unstable.
Don't you go anywhere!
That pressure changes how you move through the estate. You can't ever treat rooms as cleared and safe. Most of the safety in the rooms you search is just temporary.
I'm gonna squash you like a bug. Hope Marguerite didn't hear that. You are nothing.
All of these things stack together in a way that reshapes how you think while playing. You think about whether you can afford to spend 2 bullets instead of combos or efficiency. You think about whether that hallway Jack was in is worth exploring again to see if you missed something, and whether you should craft some first aid now or hold on to that chem fluid in case you find some gunpowder because you're running low on pistol ammo. All the fights are close quarters. The rooms are tight and the enemies absorb enough damage that you can't be reckless. Even when you win, you feel like you paid for it. That being said, there aren't constant waves of enemies. All the fights are spaced out. That spacing gives each one weight. When something pulls itself out of a mold-covered wall, you really feel it each time. What all this does is shrinks you. It brings you back down to the size of the environment. You don't dominate anything in this game. You navigate the world carefully, manage what you have, listen for footsteps, and check corners. Survival becomes about awareness and restraint. None of these systems scream at you, they just limit you, and that limitation is what rebuilds the tension. You survive by paying attention, holding back, and treating every room like it deserves respect. One of the things this game does very well, and I don't think people talk about it enough, is how controlled it feels. It never feels out of control though. Even when it's chaotic or when something disgusting is happening on screen, the structure behind it feels deliberate. Like the game knows exactly how long to hold you in a moment before moving on. The early hours are slow on purpose. You're walking through this house and there's space and time between events. You're looking at objects, reading notes, you're just kinda existing in the space. The game lets you sit in it for a bit instead of rushing to show you everything at once. And that is really important here. Because by the time the dinner scene hits, you've already absorbed enough of the house for it to feel grounded. You're strapped to a chair, listening to this family argue and laugh and talk around you like you're nothing but a chained up animal. It's uncomfortable in a very personal way. This isn't loud horror, it's humiliation, it's powerlessness. Being force-fed rot and laughed at when you puke all over yourself.
Oh shit, he's not eating it, Jack!
But then, the game pulls back a little. You escape, you explore again, and get a moment to breathe. And then Jack starts roaming. That shift from being trapped at the table to being hunted through hallways feels calculated. The game introduces pressure in stages. First it was psychological discomfort, then it turns to pursuit. And it doesn't keep Jack glued to you the entire time. He comes in waves. He appears, forces you to react, and then there's space again. That rhythm is intentional.
Wasted your time.
Then you hit the VHS tapes, and those are pacing tools more than anything. They pause the forward motion without feeling like a break. You're still playing, but you're stepping into a contained memory. It changes perspective for a few minutes, gives you some information, builds tension, and then drops you back into the present. It keeps the experience from becoming flat. As you get further into the game, the tone just slowly shifts instead of snapping. Marguerite's section is where things turn physical in a way that's really hard to ignore. The discomfort here becomes more invasive, the area itself feels hostile in a new way, and the boss fight really lingers. You're doing more than just surviving with Marguerite, you're enduring something disgusting. Then Lucas brings a completely different energy. He's calculated, he sets traps, he watches. He sets up these horrible, almost like Saw games. There's a lot of intention behind his cruelty. That changes how you move. You start thinking about him manipulating you instead of just surviving the area. Does that box have an item in it for me, or is it going to blow me up? By the time you reach the testing area and then the ship, the game starts to widen its lens a bit. You start to understand the larger context. You start seeing more of the bioterror elements the series is known for. The scale stretches a bit, but here's what's important with that. Even when the scale stretches, the pacing stays measured.
We'll be together forever.
The game never floods you with constant noise, or never locks you into one emotional note for very long. It builds pressure, releases just a little bit, and then builds it again in a different way. There are quiet stretches where you're just reorganizing your inventory in a safe room. Then there's tense stretches where you're listening for footsteps. Fear in this game is very layered. It moves from discomfort to pursuit to revulsion to psychological manipulation to revelation. And because it's structured that way, you never feel numb to it. You're adjusting the entire time, you're recalibrating. The game understands that intensity only works if it's earned. It lets you sit in silence just long enough for your guard to drop, and then it nudges something sideways. And even near the end, when more context is revealed and things open up, the experience still feels contained within its own rules. It never loses its sense of control over you. That's the key. RE7 never tries to overwhelm you with anything. It guides you. It tightens and loosens its grip in specific moments. And that structure is why the escalation works. Because it feels deliberate and planned. It feels like someone sat down and thought carefully about how long you should stay uncomfortable before pushing you further. That kind of pacing is intentional, and it's one of the reasons the game holds together so well from the start to the finish.
Ain't getting away.
So when you really step back and look at RE7's story, what makes it hit is just how personal it is. At the center of all of this is Ethan Winters. He gets an email from his wife who's been missing for 3 years. That's it, that's the hook. A message that says, "Come find me," and he goes.
Ethan. You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have.
That's the entire reason he ends up in Dulve, Louisiana. No training or backup, just a guy driving towards something he doesn't understand because he loves someone.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. It's Mia. She's not dead. She's alive. She's back.
And Mia's complicated. Before she ever becomes the terrified woman chained in that guest house, she was working for a group called the Connections. She was basically assigned as Eveline's handler. Her job was to babysit a bioweapon, to monitor her during transport. That transport goes wrong. The tanker carrying Eveline loses control and chaos breaks out. The ship crashes and Eveline, this engineered child weapon, ends up washing up on shore in Louisiana. That's where the Bakers come in.
We'll be together forever.
Jack finds Mia and Eveline and brings them home. Not the evil monster Jack that we know, just a normal caring man who sees 2 stranded people that need help. That decision destroys his entire family. She wants one. Eveline was engineered to want a family. She was built to bond, to imprint, to need. And when she doesn't get the affection she wants, she reshapes the people around her until they give it to her. So when she infects the Bakers, they don't feel like they're being controlled. They believe she belongs there. They see her as a daughter, they defend her, protect her, and will attack anyone who threatens the family. Jack, Marguerite, Lucas, all of them warped by this mold network that connects their minds back to her. That's what makes this so devastating.
Done that! It f***ing hurts!
Does it want to be my daddy? Then he can die.
Because at one point, they were just a normal family in Louisiana. They had dinners, routines, they had a house full of love and memories. And slowly that house becomes this rotted, infected place where who they once were just starts to be a distant memory. There's a moment late in the game when Ethan is consumed by mold. He slips into this weird in-between state and comes face to face with Jack Baker again. But Jack is different this time. He seems sorry, heartbroken, and ashamed of what him and his family have turned into. He apologizes to Ethan. He talks about not being able to control himself. He was aware of what he was doing, but you see the way Eveline's control works is she bores her way into your mind with the mold. She makes you have these uncontrollable urges to do these horrible things. Even if it's against your nature, it's very difficult to resist her. This moment reframes everything. You realize the Bakers weren't monsters. They were good people that were aware of what they were doing and didn't have enough strength to fight back. For me, that hits extremely hard.
She forces her way into your mind, your soul. You can't fight back.
Then there's Mia. Mia carries the guilt in this story. She was directly involved. She knew Eveline existed and knew she was dangerous. She tried to keep her contained, and when Eveline manipulates that email to Ethan, part of it is Eveline wanting him there, wanting him to fill a role. There's something tragic about watching Ethan fight his own wife early in the game. She's not fully herself. She switches between lucidity and violence. You can hear the break in her voice and see her face change when she snaps in and out of control. You aren't directly fighting a villain here. You're fighting someone infected by something that rewrote her. And Ethan just keeps pushing forward, surviving and trying to save Mia anyways. The mold in general is its own thing. It's not only a disease or infection that moves from person to person. It acts more like a network. It grows through walls and other structures, through bodies. It connects everything it touches. When someone becomes infected, they become linked. Eveline sits at the center of that like a signal tower. Anyone infected becomes part of that system. In its final stages, all ego is completely lost. And then there are the actual molded enemies. They aren't what we usually think of for a common Resident Evil enemy. Their bodies are reshaped by that fungal mass. They're humanoids but stripped down. The mold feeds on bodies and eventually replaces them. They move like something held together by tar and chunks of bone. They feel hollow. This isn't a person that's turned into a monster, it's something that has completely consumed and replaced that person. That's the scary part here. This doesn't only rot or turn you, it replaces you. When someone turns, it feels like their individuality gets absorbed into a larger organism. The bakers keep fragments of who they were, which makes them tragic. The molded doesn't even have that. They're extensions, byproducts, bodies grown for the sake of defending Eveline. And because the mold spreads through the estate itself, the environment feels complicit. You're walking through molded veins and tissue half the time. The house is literally alive. Now lastly, there's Eveline. She ages rapidly. This is because of her unstable engineering. Her body breaks down and she needs medicine to slow it. As she declines physically, her emotional instability grows. She lashes out, makes demands, punishes. Her final form is scary, sure, but what sticks is that she wanted a family and was built in a lab to simulate human attachment.
You.
Why does everyone hate me?
Even the big bad of this game feels tragic to me. Her final words in her human form when she starts crying mold is, "Why does everyone hate me?" Yeah, she was engineered to crave a family bond, but that doesn't change the fact that originally, she was just a little girl that wanted to be loved. Engineered or not, that's heavy. She didn't choose to be this. At the end of the game, when everything feels contained within the estate, Chris Redfield shows up. It's short, but it's kind of important. He's working with an anti-bioweapon group associated with Blue Umbrella. They've been monitoring what's happening.
Use it!
Playtime.
They step in once the situation hits a certain threshold. And that moment pulls the curtain back. This wasn't just an isolated nightmare in Louisiana. It's connected to the larger world of bioweapons, organizations tracking outbreaks, and to remnants of corporate research pipelines that never fully died. The mold, Eveline, the connections, it all plugs back into the broader Resident Evil universe. But it does something new. It centers everything around personal consequence. Ethan isn't here because of duty, it's not his job. He's here because of love, guilt, and a refusal to give up. The Bakers aren't villains chasing power, they're people consumed by something engineered to manipulate attachment. And Eveline isn't a monster in the traditional sense. She's a weapon built around emotional need. That shifts the texture of the series. Because in this one, the infection is psychological. It attacks relationships, rewrites families, and weaponizes intimacy. And that's why this story always hit me really hard. Underneath all the mold and body horror, it's about people who were twisted into something else against their will. About a husband who refuses to walk away, a family that never meant to become what they did, and about a weapon built to crave something it could never truly have. That's what RE7 adds to the bigger picture. It narrows the lens and makes the horror a lot more personal.
And these guys are here to clean up the mess. I had just come to terms with losing Mia. And now she's back and wants to start over. Put all this behind us. Maybe this is where the next door opens.
When the game came out in 2017, you could tell almost immediately that everything changed. It had great reviews, but it was also just the vibe online. The way people talked about it, people saying things like return to form. Big outlets were saying it felt closer to what made Resident Evil special in the first place. Polygon straight up said it pushed the series back towards its roots. And that conversation alone was huge. Because before that, the fan base was scattered, people arguing about direction, scale, and about what the series even was anymore. It felt fragmented. Then 7 comes out, and suddenly the conversation feels more focused, cleaner, like people are finally talking about the same thing again. The game reviewed very strong. Generally favorable on Metacritic sounds a bit dry on paper, but in context it meant the risk paid off. Critics respected it. Players respected it. It felt like a win. But here's the part that really sticks with me. It stayed. It didn't come out, have a big launch window, then fade away. Capcom's own Platinum titles data shows Resident Evil 7 kept climbing year after year. As of mid-2025, it's sitting about 15 million copies sold, and it didn't get there in one giant launch spike. Some later reports showed that it's been moving around 1 million copies a year for a long time. I mean, I just bought it again for this video. That kind of steady movement really says something. That's word of mouth, new players picking it up years later. It's quietly become one of Capcom's top-tier sellers across the entire catalog. That's sustained relevance, not just a short hype window.
You know?
And internally, it mattered even more. Resident Evil 7 was one of the first major releases built on the RE engine. That engine went on to become the backbone of Capcom's modern games. Once it worked, Capcom leaned into it hard. From that point forward, the RE engine became the foundation for everything in the series. It gave them stability and confidence. You could feel that in almost everything that followed this. Then there's the VR. At the time, committing to full VR support in a mainline horror title was bold. Kawada talked about how natural horror felt once they saw it inside the headset. But getting there took work. Camera adjustments, performance tuning, environmental detail that had to hold up when someone leaned inches away from it. And it landed. It won some VR awards. It showed up on the best of 2017 lists. It made people take VR seriously as more than just a novelty mode. That kind of commitment shifts how people look at a franchise. What Resident Evil 7 really did was steady the brand. It reminded people what the series feels like. It brought the focus back to tension and atmosphere. It proved a concentrated horror experience could thrive at a big budget level. And once that stability was there, Capcom built on it. You can see the consistency in the years after 2017, the polish, direction, and confidence. There's a clear line from that house in Louisiana to the strength the franchise carries now. When people ask if RE7 saved the series, I don't even feel the need to go dramatic with that. What it did was ground it. It rebuilt trust, validated a new engine, showed staying power in cells instead of a quick flash, and it recentered the identity in the public conversation. That's legacy. Resident Evil stands as the point where the franchise found its footing again in modern space. And years later, where you look at where Resident Evil sits critically, commercially, culturally, you can trace that confidence back to 2017. Back to one house in Louisiana, one heartbreaking story about a family being destroyed. That's why it matters. It shifted the direction of everything. And that's Resident Evil 7. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you for hanging out with me for a while. I really do appreciate you all. If you enjoyed the video and you haven't yet, consider subbing. There's a lot of content already on the channel and there's always more coming. Also consider leaving a like and dropping a comment. Let me know what you thought about Resident Evil 7. Did you like it, or are you one of the people it didn't really land with? I'm always curious where everyone stands on this one, because it really was a turning point. Also, if you're watching on mobile, consider hitting the hype button. It gives the video hype points, which essentially tells the algorithm, hey, this video is good, more people should see it. It's a way that you can directly help grow the video. But again, thank you all for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. But as always, I'll see y'all later.
You stop.